Welcome back to War Thunder and welcome to the dev server and welcome aboard certain ships. First of all, Tribal Class Destroyer, rank 2 battle rating 3.0, and that is a surprise. Now if we have a destroyer with this kind of armament at 3.0, you know, there is room for bigger ships with bigger guns and more of them. Let's go through the stats at first. So we have 3 double turrets with 120mm CP19 mounting guns with overall mission count of 1,800 rounds, and another turret with dual 102mm Mark 19 mountings with 800 rounds, which is secondaries. And then also one quadruple 40mm 2-pounder quick firing Mark II C cannon with just 400 rounds for, you know, that kind of caliber. Then also 2 20mm Olicon Mark II cannons with 4,800 rounds, 2 quadruple 12.7mm Vickers Mark V with 800 rounds, and at the end one torpedo launcher with 4 533mm Mark 8 torpedoes. The ship weighs 2,500 tons, and well, at the moment you cannot really tell too much about how it stacks up in comparison to other ships. And against the previous boats that we saw in the previous test, I have to say this is a beast. But then, you know, this is the British ship. We also have a Russian big ship. Overall, for the British side, we had the Dark MGB, and also here the Tribal Class, and also the Wellington medium bomber. So again, let me tell you this all in context. First of all, my opinion about this test was it came as a surprise, but I was aware of it coming due to a contacted Gaijin who told me. So that's a big improvement in how to handle the dev server. It also was announced publicly, but I don't think that in all the tests so far more than 900 people participated, which is a little bit of a shame, because the next thing is, in all the matches that I participated in, I had 1, maybe 2 human opponents. The rest were AI. Yeah, speaking of AI, this is just a scene here where I'm slaughtering the enemy cargo ships, and in the bottom left corner you can see the count. The enemy still has 6, we still have 7 of those cargo ships, and the side that sinks all of the enemy's cargo ships first has won the game. So I think it's not so important to win the game as more the experience, the testing and so on. Now, what has changed, what remained the same? First of all, overall I think many things stayed the same in overall handling. I think overall the destroyers and their size and their firepower is the major thing that improved or changed. The damage models, yeah, they are not, you know, too different, but they are a little bit different. You do not have to completely destroy all sections of a ship to sink it, although this is still a way to go. I think now there are much more functional ammo racks in terms of blowing up, also on the AI ships. Then you can now switch between the ammunition types, and even the British have APHE. Yes, there's the next cargo ship. So this is not really too much skill shown here, but you know, there is so much to talk about in this test that I just came across, that I think you know, I just go in relatively widely. As you can see, we have now a torpedo lead indicator like in World of Warships, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's a proven system and it's quite intuitive, I have to say. Then we also have the AI ships shooting back, which is not so... It's not so decisive for a destroyer, but the patrol boats, they actually suffer greatly at the hands of those cargo ships. Now, more on the cargo ships and patrol boats later on. Let's just say there is a way to exploit the system and to win the game faster than you think. The medium bombers, I think they need 3,600 spawn points so that you can get your that you can unlock it to fly out. And planes still can ruin your day, but more in dealing with the AI ships than dealing with the players, while they still can deal with the players. But at the moment it's more like that, you know, it's much easier for the medium bombers that we have. And the next thing is we have a hull break mechanic here. Now this works both ways. First of all, against AI units and also against players. Against players it's a bit awkward sometimes, and it seems like it's most likely having to do with armor piercing at close range of full volley into one section deals the hull break. Speaking of hull break and hull breaker, this is the Russian ship, the Project 7Y, which again is rank 2 battle rating 3.0. And again it raises the question, what will there be at higher battle ratings, you know? Because this has a main armament of 4 turrets being equipped with a single 130mm B13 gun in each turret with 400 rounds in total. And secondaries are 2 76mm 34K mountings with 600 rounds. Then also 9 45mm 21K cannons with 1440 rounds, and also 4 12.7mm Dushk machine guns with 2000 rounds. Then we have 2 torpedo launchers with 3 torpedoes each, so 6 torpedoes in total. Caliber is 533mm after 5338 torpedoes. If I'm not mistaken, those are the same ones as on the IL-4, and the main armament is very similar to the Su-100Y, but the rate of fire is obviously much higher. And this ship does have less frontal firepower than the British equivalent, but you know, the shells hit harder, and here we can see the engagement with an enemy player. And we also can see the rather awkward aiming. I have to aim much higher to hit the water line, and I also aim a little bit for maybe knocking out the enemy's guns, which is not that easy. Again, the aim is indirect, and well, I just have problems in certain situations to aim the way that I want. The shells just don't go there where you aim them. Now I know that the shells also carry the momentum of the ship. That means if I go from east to west, for example, and I fire broadside north, then also the shells go mostly north, but also in the direction of the ship that is them firing at that moment with that speed. I know that, but still the aim is a bit more tricky than that. It is also the horizontal lead that is very awkward. The shell damage themselves, which type of ammunition you choose for which situation, again, it's up to you. And that brings the first tactical point into play, how to play those destroyers. Again, this was hull break. I have no idea why this was suddenly hull break. So there might be game mechanics that I don't understand so far. That's okay. It's still in beta, so everything is subject to change. It's on the dev server for a reason, I guess. So it's like sandbox where they just can build something and in terms of game mechanics, try it out with the help of players and testers, and then throw it overboard, literally, and come up with something new. I have to say the system or the test so far is not too bad. It's the overall gameplay experience that is still not there, but again, you know, it's mostly about testing the mechanics, I guess. So a shame is that I can't have a look in the port, so to speak, and have a decent look at the ships. There might be something on the internet that I haven't seen. I have also not really looked for that so far, because I'm just telling you what I can extract from the game itself. So overall, the ship is a little bit sluggisher, or a little bit more sluggish than the British equivalent. Again, the rate of fire, the shell density, the overall ammunition count, especially frontally, is not as high as, for example, on the British ship. Again, hullbreak. It seems to work in rather close ranges, as I said. Again, you can see you have to aim much higher. It also tends to still affect the guns, how the ship is listing forwards, backwards, sideways. Despite the real feelable stabilization, it's still not there. So again, I just rush into those cargo ships and I hold the torpedoes back up until a point that I really have a good line of fire for them. And meanwhile, whatever I can shoot, I try to shoot with the guns. However, I try to prioritize those ships that I possibly cannot hit as fast with torpedoes. And again, the cargo ships shoot back. And you can see I can't press B, so I can't stop the flooding. That's currently a bug, seems to be, like in certain situations. I have no idea how it causes. In all other matches except this one, it worked. Flooding is not that that dangerous initially, except if you get hit by a torpedo, but that's a different story, I guess. Then you also can see that the fire extinguisher, there is no number. Same goes for the repair kit. So you have practically unlimited amounts, unlike, for example, in tanks, where you just have 2 fire extinguishers. So if you repair all at once, then your rate of fire seems to go down. That's at least the impression that I have. So the next thing that I really feel like, let's talk about the map size. It's around about something between, somebody said it's around about 13-14 kilometers long and wide. So that's quite a map size. But I think this map reminds me like the convoy attack, but turned around for 90 degrees, or the spawns are turned around for 90 degrees. And that gives the patrol boats later on, or the torpedo boats, a nasty advantage, as we will see later on in the third gameplay that I will show you. So here I aim between the islands. By the way, those islands are displayed wrongly according to the minimap, so keep that in mind. So I launched a single torpedo on the left cargo ship, and now I'm bombarding the right one a little bit. The ships, while are not so fast going forwards as patrol boats, they still have quite some maneuverability. Again, not as much to really dodge torpedoes in close quarters, especially when they're coming broadside. You don't get the red box too fast or quick enough to react in time on them. So it's a little bit like World of Warships again, but again, this is just a dev server. Everything is subject to change. Now I have a critical hit here on the engine room and the fuel tanks, and I look for a new compartment to damage. So it's a little bit repetitive, but I have to say, now it's hull break again. I have no idea why it was now hull break and not the previous salvos. Again, launching a few more additional torpedoes. One torpedo is enough to sink a cargo ship. And yeah, that's a hull break, of course. And I got also destroyed by another ship. I have no idea what it caused, but it doesn't matter. So at this point I'm switching over to the plane. That is the next point. Planes still can ruin your day. And we have again the IL-4 for the Russians, and I selected the bomb load with the assault fuse. I tend to drop the bombs from some altitude, so the fuse switches then in flight to practically a contact fuse, and with 2 drops I have 2 kills secured if I'm not screwing up. Again, the cargo ships actually shoot at the planes when they are coming too close. So the cargo ships, they are kind of the objective in this test, but it's not like, you know, you just have to drive by and sink them and whatever you do, nothing happens to you. No, they actually shoot back. So that's particularly dangerous for planes and again for the patrol boats. Another cargo ship was sunk by a torpedo of mine, so that's quite nice. Yeah, let's talk about the map size and the engagement range. As you could see in the beginning, the closer I got, the more accurate my fire got and the more hits I dealt, and also the more damage, which is not, which shouldn't come as a surprise when you think about the armor-piercing rounds. Obviously, at distance they lose penetration, but it feels also like they lose punch in terms of damage effect, which is a bit weird. I mean, yes, technically when you also include spalling damage, yeah, then the faster the shell goes, the bigger it is. And that brings us to plunging fire. Now, those destroyer guns, they can reach out, I guess the maximum range is around about 10 kilometers. That's what the rangefinder says as maximum range. You can practically aim above that, but after that the fire gets incredibly inaccurate. Depending on the gun, the best engagement range, or where the engagement ranges begin to get really effective, is between 3,000 and 2,500 meters. And this is also the point where the trajectories of the shell get much flatter. And let's look at the let's follow the bomb into the target. That's what I wanted to say. And this is a very beautiful hit, and 2 ships down. And again, those were the last 2 ships, so this is why I just needed 2 drops, and this was fast and safe. So that's another victory secured. Let's have a quick look at a few post-battle results. Yeah, I mean, that was practically 14 minutes. So let's go into the third match, and this is the Dark MGB, and you can see where I spawned. This was nearly the middle of the map, within the ice field. And while I hammer a few test rounds, so to speak, across the map, towards the UK cargo ship Liberty, I just think to myself, well, I have 4 torpedoes. The Russian equivalent just has 2. You can't reload those torpedoes. Same goes for the destroyers. So while the Russian destroyer has more in 2 launchers, so 6 in total, compared to the 4 of the British destroyer, the torpedo boats or patrol boats, whatever you call it, or whatever you want to call them, it's the other way around. So the Russian just has 2, but therefore more depth charges. It's very late indeed, which are practically useless. So my thing is just to try to get close enough to release the torpedoes and then die and repeat. Now, if you have a look at the placement, how the cargo ships are placed, there are 2 frontline patrol boats. I'm sorry about this; it's getting kind of confusing here. And you can launch torpedoes at them, but then you have to wait until the point that they are destroyed, so that you can go around the islands or reposition yourself to engage the other patrol boats. If you're going too close, you get shredded by the defensive fire of the frontline cargo ships. So I have here a plan. I'm watching the minimap. If there is an enemy destroyer here, the destroyers obviously can one-shot you. A good HE round straight in the middle of the ship and you blow up. I think that is kind of a refreshing mechanic in terms of dealing damage and damage model overall. So it's not a hit point system as many people feared. By the way, you can switch between the torpedo launchers by repeatedly pressing Q. So that's a nice system depending on where the torpedo launchers are mounted. And this is the second one. And I'm very careful with how to aim them. Now the torpedoes actually aim correctly. So where you aim them, where you release them, they're going to hit. Obviously they have a limited range. I think it's around about 2 or 3 kilometers, and I'm way within this threshold. So I'm quite sure that those torpedoes will hit. The torpedoes are decent in terms of speed, but they are certainly no World of Warship monsters. I guess the one thing that people that now come from World of Warships don't understand, that you have to imply more skill. You have to less rely on game mechanics. What I mean by that, if you compare it to how destroyers in World of Warships play, it's very arcadish, which is not a bad thing in the first place, but you know, it just plays out much differently. So what is better, World of Warships or War Thunder? Well, World of Warships is in full release for over a year. Yes, nice torpedo hit. And well, this is still pre-beta, where we even don't know what the biggest ships will be. So again, let's talk about plunging fire. Why is this so important? Well, this opens up a whole new level of how to say it, possibilities for the ship combat. There you can see the cargo ships opening up. I released 2 torpedoes on 2 different targets. I am out of... actually, that was a bug. It was just 1 torpedo that I released. I still have 1 remaining because I just could release on one of the cargo ships. But you can see this is kind of looking awesome. It's looking awesome. Now the gameplay itself in a nutshell is a long time you're driving just in a straight line to get somewhere, and then the engagement is fun, frantic, and can end very disastrous for you. Another torpedo launched. So it is like a little bit like Air RB in terms of how the engagements go on. It's much different from tank gameplay in this respect. Because in tanks, you know, you're always in the combat zone theoretically. You always can potentially get cross-mapped by an enemy tank. And when we think about, you know, the range that you get actually accurate fire off, that now limits, you know, the actual combat zone for yourself to around about effectively maximum 3 kilometers. That's what I will expect from the strongest destroyers in terms of armament. As far as I know, historically accurate scene, the biggest armament was on German destroyers in terms of caliber, with 150mm guns. Another torpedo, yes. So just 4 cargo ships remaining, and I do it all over again. So they have then kind of the caliber advantage, how the actual guns will perform in terms of mass velocity, energy retention of the shell, trajectory. That has to be seen. So when we then talk about cruisers and much bigger caliber like 8-inch or 203mm, you know, they then suddenly have a much drastic advantage in terms of you know, to cross map something. But on the other hand, destroyers can't throw off the aim of a heavy cruiser. Let's just go into that theoretical mind game, so to speak, for a moment, by just changing their course. So because the shells need some time to go in, you might have seen it in the beginning with some of the long range shooting, you can have 2, maybe even 3 salvos in the air before the salvo drops down in terms of reload versus, or rate of fire versus shell distance. So yeah, cruisers are then the long range weapon, but they need bigger maps to maneuver, to actually have a point and not just be stational shore batteries. Same goes for potential battle cruisers or battleships. And then we also have to talk about the other thing. You know, I told you before that some of the armament of those ships is counted as secondaries. Yes, you have AI gunners on your ships, and you then can switch between the armament, main armament, secondaries, AAA weapons. The one thing that I miss that I would improve would be the option to fire everything. So in a brawling scenario, it doesn't matter what you have, you want to fire. The main guns aimed at the waterline. When they're out, you aim for the turrets or other vital components of a ship that you then can hit much easier with the higher rate of fire cannons or machine guns. So that would be something to improve right away. Yeah, then the map has to be bigger for bigger ships, obviously, but I think that this is not an impossible thing to do when we think about, you know, the biggest maps in War Thunder, that you know, the New English Channel, for example, or just think about a normal AirRB map. They are big enough. Yes, the terrain quality is not the highest, but they are the oldest maps in War Thunder overall, so keep that in mind. Then depth charges. You also can add a different fuse delay on depth charges. Why? Does this have any significant... Does this make any sense? I'm not quite sure. Theorizing about submarines, U-boats, I don't think so. Because, you know, a submarine can change the its diving depth, so to speak, but you just can adjust the fuse delay for depth charges before you spawn in the ship. So yeah, it's just theorizing here again, but I don't think that they are on the table for Gaijin. Yeah, again, the minimap should be readjusted and correct where the islands are, because that would make for much stronger tactical gameplay, in my opinion. If you still have to look around, it's a little bit awkward. I have learned to heavily rely on the minimap, and to relearn it, well, it's quite annoying, to be honest. So overall, I like the visuals, they are great, the sound effects are great, the overall game experience could be better, but I think to just have 1 or 2 players per match on each side, you know, the matchmaker should work in the way that he should allow more players to get into the match. So firing 2 torpedoes at the last remaining cargo ship just because I can, and then going for it with the 40mm. I'm actually trying to hit here the gun mountings on the cargo ship, the defensive gunners, but I'm having no luck. I jammed my gun, but the cooldown with the reload is rather fast indeed. So to make a drive-by on a cargo ship and sink it with depth charges, well, it's more wish thinking than realistic. I tried it I never made it. Torpedoes launched from 1.5 kilometers away is still the safest option. Yeah. I think the gameplay overall is more diverse than I thought after the first two games. You still have to practice yourself. I still hope that the indirect aiming system will get improved, but again, this is beta, this is subject to change, and I destroyed the last remaining cargo ship. So, where is the place for those torpedo boats and those, you know, smaller ships compared to destroyers with a much lower battle rating? Well, it is down to the map design, and I think the high maneuverability combined with their small size allows those torpedo boats to lay ambushes for bigger ships, and so the next bigger ship is there to clear the area from potential ambush ships like torpedo boats for the even bigger ships, which then can do some long-range duel. Again, let's theorize here, let's implement, just for the sake of the argument, a light cruiser versus another light cruiser. And yeah, they prefer to fire at each other, as the destroyers just can evade the shots and constantly change direction much faster than the cruisers can, the light cruisers. So the light cruisers, because of being a bigger target, are also the easier to hit aim, and also they pose a bigger threat for your ship. So I guess it's kind of natural balance, but we will see how it works out. With this test on the dev server, Gaijin has simply opened a new chapter in the final vehicle implementation line, and I think it's a good change. There is room for improvement, but this is the very first test of this sort, and yeah, well done Gaijin, well done. So that's it for me today. Thanks for watching, thanks for listening. Please let me know your thoughts on this beta test on the dev server. Did you also get noticed fast enough? Did you participate? What do you think about this? Do you still wait for battleships, or are you saying, well, I have to first try with this? Let me know. And yeah, give this video a like if you did, subscribe if you want to see more, and we'll see each other on the waves of War Thunder.